for our viewers, Gideon is arguably the finest cricket writer at the moment. Gideon, you wrote a moving book on Shane Warne many years ago. What's your sense? What does this mean? What did Shane Warne mean to Australia, to world cricket?
Well, I think you can almost talk about cricket in Australia as being pre-Warne and post-Warne, interrupted by the 15-year pageant of his career. He changed cricket so unrecognisably that it's almost difficult to remember what the game was like before him. There was nothing to announce him. I think in Australia, you'd heard about this thing called leg spin, but in the 1990s in Australia, early 1990s, you never really saw it. It was almost a mythic skill. It had drifted almost completely out of popular circulation, and then all of a sudden, Warne materialises in 1992-93, bowls that ball that you mentioned, the ball of the century, and lo and behold, it's every bit as wondrous as the old timers had told us. He reintroduced an old skill that had been felt to be extinct and introduced to it magical, hitherto unsuspected qualities, as well as delivering it with a panache and a flair and a love of attention that I don't think any other Australian cricketer will ever attain.
So in a sense, it was Warne, of course, the magician on the pitch with his mystery leg spinners, the flippers. But it was also presumably, Gideon, Warne, the entertainer, the performer, this larger-than-life figure that in a way makes him so loved and so remembered across the world. He was a riveting experience to watch Shane Warne on the field and, dare I say, even off it.
It was, and he had a particular sort of repertoire of personal flaws and foibles that both outraged people and also strangely endeared him to the public. He was a man of great appetites. He was a man of sometimes of ill discipline, but he brought a certain love of life to his daily doings. I think when you saw Warne dealing with the trappings of fame and sometimes buckling underneath them, there was a temptation to think, well, how would I deal with this if I was just an ordinary person? Because Warne, it was extraordinarily ordinary, in very, nondescript suburban origins, very sort of middling tastes, very sort of everyday appearances. He didn't look like an athlete. He looked like the kind of guy who you might meet in the street. And yet somehow when he rolled his arm over, magic happened and went on happening for a long period. Warne had a long career at Test level at a time when his game was being relentlessly studied, at a time when everyone was trying to work out how to get the better of him. Right. And only very, very few ever did. And none, I think, for a sustained period. Perhaps Sachin Tendulkar had the edge on him in India, but that was a legendary contest, out of which I think both men emerged with great credit.
I have another legend with us, Gideon. Sunil Gavaskar is with us. Mr. Gavaskar, when you look at first of all, your first reaction when you just heard that at the age of 52, Shane Warne, with whom you've shared the commentary box till I'm sure not too long ago, has passed away.
Big shock, a real big shock, because who expects anybody to pass at the age of 52? So it was a huge shock when my son actually sent me a message saying, "Is it true?" And I didn't know how to respond. And within the space of 24 hours, the cricket world has lost two giants of the game, not just Australian cricket, but the cricket world. Rodney Marsh first, and now Shane Warne. This is unbelievable. Hard to come to grips with.
Because this morning, as you said, Rodney Marsh, the other Aussie great, died, and Shane Warne actually tweeted 12 hours ago paying tribute to Rodney Marsh. What for you stood out about Shane Warne, Sunil Gavaskar? Why is it that he is acknowledged, as many call him, the greatest spinner the world has perhaps ever seen?
Well, because he mastered a craft which is so difficult to master, which is wrist spin, which is leg spin, and to pick 700 plus wickets like he did in Test cricket, plus I think hundreds other in one-day cricket, just tells you how good a bowler he was. Uh, Finger spin is a lot easier. You have a lot more control over what you want to bowl, but leg spin or wrist spin is very very tough. And for him to have bowled the way he did, the way he seemed to create magic, the way he seemed to be able to deliver magic deliveries at will, was the reason why he was, revered all over the cricketing world.
Any personal experience you want to share with us of working with Shane Warne? I know you didn't play against him, but any experience that stands out for you about the man?
Well, the fact that he was always full of life, always wanting to say, "What are you doing in the evening?" So let's get together. Go and have a meal or something like that. He was always looking to live life, fully, king size as they call it, and he did that. And maybe because he lived life in such a manner, is perhaps the reason why his heart couldn't take it, and he passed away so soon.
You've seen the great spinners over 50 years, the Indian spinners across the world. Would you say in your cricketing times, he's the greatest spinner that you've seen?
No, I wouldn't say that. No, for me, the Indian spinners and Muthaiya Muralidharan were certainly better than Shane Warne. Because look at Shane Warne's record against India. It was pretty ordinary against India. In India, he got 5 wickets only once in Nagpur, and that too because despite the fact that the Indian team had been told, I was a consultant for the Indian team then, and some of the small targets that we had set, I had set them was not to allow a a century partnership between Langer and Haynes, battles within the battles, as they call it, and not to allow Shane Warne to take 5 wickets, because till then, that last trip in 2004, Shane Warne hadn't taken 5 wickets in an innings in India.
Right.
And then Zahir Khan, with Shane Warne having taken 4 wickets, Zahir Khan just swung wildly at a ball and was caught at deep mid wicket to give Shane Warne his fifer. But because he didn't have much success against Indian players who are very, very good players of spin bowling, I don't think I would call him the greatest. Certainly, I think Muthaiya Muralidharan, with the success that he had against India, would rank over him in my book.
Okay, interesting. But many would say that his impact overall on the sport was perhaps even greater. Gideon, would you agree with that? That perhaps Shane Warne was not just about the wickets he took, but just the impact that he had on the game over the last quarter of a century, whether in England, whether in Australia, indeed wherever he went?
I think he was the most compulsively watchable cricketer of my era. It was almost as though there were two games taking place. There was the game involving Warne and the game involving everybody else. If it was ever a slow news day, all he did was put the glasses on Warne. He'd do something. He'd do something outrageous. He'd do something extraordinary. He'd do something prodigal. It may not be great, but it would be momentous. It would be the defining feature of the game. And I don't think anyone in cricket has had more relish for that great moment, the crowning moment, the particular drama of a single over or a single delivery, and backed themselves so consistently to win those one-to-one contests. Now, even when Warne was often at bay, but he was never completely beaten. He was the last man to give up in any struggle. And he communicated that to his teammates. I think Australia, with Warne in it, was perhaps more formidable by a greater factor than a single player. Now, you look at the Adelaide Test match of 2006, where it seemed as though the match was drifting to a draw on a very, very flat wicket on the final morning. Now, Warne turns up and he persuades his teammates by sheer conviction that the game can be won. No one else thinks it. But by the end of listening to Warne and his peroration, everyone's on his side. And lo and behold, he goes out and wins it. I don't think anyone has had that capacity to captivate a dressing room and to draw men along with him.
Right.
The extraordinary thing is that, of course, he never captained Australia in Test cricket. He may be the best captain that we never had.
Yes, absolutely. Just one quick final word, Mr. Gavaskar. One of his achievements was winning the IPL inaugural year with Rajasthan Royals, leading a very young side. And that was quite remarkable because this was Shane Warne after retirement from international cricket, winning the inaugural IPL. So he had an impact in that sense on Indian cricket. You know, as you said, he didn't have success in India as a bowler, but as a captain, he was quite remarkable. As Gideon says, probably the best captain Australia never had.
Well, yes, I think that that particular inaugural season was amazing because he didn't really have big names playing under him. That is when, remember, he gave Ravindra Jadeja the name Rockstar. And look at the way Ravindra Jadeja has now grown into the kind of cricketer who can impact the game with his batting, bowling, and fielding. So yes, I think Warne had the knack of spotting talent, trying to encourage talent. Yes, I think definitely yes, a big impact that he had. As far whether he was the best captain that Australia never had, I think the Australian selection committee does really know its job, and we have seen so many of wonderful first-class players just not being able to take that extra step and do well at the international level. And you can say the same thing about captains as well. They could be captains of their state team where they know everybody, or when you're captaining a national team with players from different provinces, it's not the same team, same thing. So let's just reserve our judgment on that as well.
Okay.